If you were a juror and had to decide right now, how would you go, guilty or not guilty, Terry Austin? You were in the courtroom all week.
Well, if I had to decide today and I'm sitting on that jury and I've heard the evidence thus far that the prosecution has put forth, I would say not guilty. And I certainly think that's where the jury is right now. They have to prove that case beyond a reasonable doubt. And there are multiple doubts in this case so far. Nothing I've seen, not the DNA so far, not the ballistics information, nothing I've seen so far has put Melly in that car with the and has him as the
likelihood of YNW Melly beating this case now is very high, as YNW Melly's lawyers are now practically asking the prosecution if they even know what they are doing. Here's what you need to know. So today we saw a report of the judge in the YNW Melly case is standing up again. He's tired of hearing the prosecution. He sounds annoyed from the evidence.
Of the same, the difference is one is an orientation shot, which is this one, and then one is a close-up. If you show just the close-up so I can talk about the characteristics of that, there's no way for me to show where it is on the body. I can say where it is, but I can't show it. So if you want an orientation so you can show where it is, and then a closer shot so I can explain the characteristics of the, then I would say both pictures.
As the trial today was a much longer session, which was all based around the prosecution bringing witnesses and experts to the stand to fully explain how the crime happened inside of the car. However, judging from the judge's own reaction, it doesn't sound like they have much, as this would then lead into one of YNW Melly's lawyers literally yelling across the courtroom, asking, "What kind of evidence do you guys even have?"
Do you have any evidence to indicate this young man was involved in this?
YNW Melly's own lawyer is getting very annoyed, sitting there for hours on end, listening to nonsense by the prosecution. This was even explained by the rap lawyer that due to a lack of evidence, there's a high chance the mistrial could be coming back.
Big drama at the YNW Melly trial today, and I told people this was going to happen. They didn't want to listen to me. The judge very upset that the courtroom camera and microphones are picking up whispers of the defendant's lawyers to each other, to the defendant. I also have raised issues. There's a photographer in there snapping away millions of photos of YNW Melly's face all day. There's a cameraman who zooms in on YNW Melly while he's having exchanges with his lawyers. Courtroom is a privilege. With our human eyes and our human ears, and our human time, we can see certain things. But when you record with high sensitivity mics and zoom and you focus in on the defense team, that's not a privilege that you have. I can bet the defense is going to use this to probably ask for another mistrial or add this to the long list of problems that they have with this trial and then ask for a mistrial.
As the mistrial talk started to rise again, as YNW Melly's lawyers are making amazing arguments proving that Melly is looking very innocent. If a mistrial is coming back and is awarded to Melly, YNW Melly will be released for the foreseeable future until the trial resumes. As the judge also announced he will be excluding evidence due to the prosecution violating the discovery rules as explained by the famous rap lawyer.
YNW Melly trial, more missteps from the prosecution. This time, the judge issuing a sanction. The sanction is the prosecution is not going to be allowed to use certain evidence. The reason? The prosecution failed to turn the evidence over in a timely manner. The defense had accused them of trying to plug up holes. You're going to see the footage from the judge where the judge says, like, this is not the right way to do it. Ultimately, I don't know if this is a huge part of their case, this evidence that's being excluded, but it speaks to the issue that the defense attorney was talking about, is this is a case. If you've got your evidence, go ahead and present it. The way the evidence is coming out, there's just too many missteps, too many technical mishaps.
This would surprise the entire internet. The prosecution are actually running out of evidence to use. This is going to make the trial last even longer than expected, as they're going to continue bringing witnesses to the stand, hoping that they can get any sort of information to try to make YNW Melly look guilty. However, in the end, this is just going to make the trial last even longer, as jurors are already asking how long is this going to take, as the average case length for a trial such as this is actually 4 to 7 days. YNW Melly's trial is projected to be a month long.
So the answer to this question is going to shock you, because initially I thought the answer to this question was trial will last maybe 2 to 3 weeks. So sometime at the end of next week, it's over. We get a verdict. next week or maybe the week after. In fact, the judge said in open court this morning, a juror had asked the judge, hey, how long is this trial going to take? Can you give us some forecast so we can plan? And the judge said this, spoke to lawyers on both sides. They expect trial will conclude at some point by the end of July, meaning trial is likely to last all of this month, June. They're going to take a day or two off for July 4th. Then trial is going to last through all of July. You're talking about multiple weeks, multiple months. It has to be said.
The prosecution literally have almost no evidence against Melly, as in the trial we would see a report of, judge in the YNW Melly trial ruled that undercover detective Danny Polo has to remove his mask for the remainder of the testimony. This is the same Danny Polo and prosecution witness that stated this about YNW Melly just last week.
And they would quickly get checked. That happened to those two kids. I don't know how old they are. Those two guys that were claiming money, the Island Boys, with the fun haircut. Okay. Yeah, they were claiming to be members of, which is a set of, and they quickly got checked by almost every that can find them on social media. They got framed, and they then had to recant and apologize.
Did you find any evidence whatsoever of any recanting or apologizing by Mr. Demmons in the records that you reviewed?
There's no recanting, there's no apologizing, there's no one calling out Mr. Demmons for being a fake.
That same man has to now remove his mask in the courtroom. When looking at YNW Melly's reaction to him revealing what he looks like, it seems as if YNW Melly knew who this man was in the streets, as this individual is an undercover that is currently in a street team of himself.
Yes, sir. You can take off your mask.
Yes, sir.
Over. State's objection, Your Honor, based on the previous issues.
Jury entering.
Which is then when, without even realizing, the Danny Polo man, once revealing his mask and continuing on with his testimony, would go on to make YNW Melly look innocent, even though he is there to help the prosecution.
Now, Melly's defense is now entering into cross-examination of Danny Polo. And what Danny is admitting on the stand, now Danny Polo had admitted that YNW Melly was actually being recruited by two different sets. And based off of the text message thread between the different individuals trying to recruit Melly, Melly was not replying. Melly stated weeks later that he was so busy doing radio interviews and shows that he just didn't have time to reply. And if you go back and read the text messages, those recruiters were basically begging Melly to reply back. And he didn't. Because Melly was an up-and-coming rapper who had a ton of money and ambition, and any of these different groups would love to have him under their roster. Because Melly wasn't interested in being a he was being labeled as somebody who was false flagging. It's possible that it was Shine that did the drive, all because Melly didn't want to be a part of their group.
As she would go on to explain that the drive-by theory that YNW Melly has been claiming since day one could be back into play, as it could seem YNW Melly was telling the truth the entire time, as we would even see another viral report that would go on to state the prosecutor is increasingly showing that this case really depends on very little evidence. All these messages are irrelevant. It shows nothing at all. No motive, no mention of the crime. It is really just pure nonsense. However, things would continue to get more interesting during the trial, as the same online lawyers then mentioned to watch out for one specific thing, which is due to the lack of evidence. It is YNW Melly's lawyers trying to show he's innocent, meaning YNW Bortland could be the guilty one in all of this, as a lawyer would share this during an interview on the news.
If you were a juror and had to decide right now, how would you go, guilty or not guilty, Terry Austin? You were in the courtroom all week.
Well, if I had to decide today, and I'm sitting on that jury, and I've heard the evidence thus far that the prosecution has put forth, I would say not guilty. And I certainly think that's where the jury is right now. They have to prove that case beyond a reasonable doubt, and there are multiple doubts in this case so far. Nothing I've seen, not the DNA so far, not the ballistics information, nothing I've seen so far has put Melly in that car with the and has him as the.
So I would go on to investigate this further as to why are lawyers now saying Melly isn't even looking guilty anymore. If he's not guilty, then who is? I noticed within 30 minutes of day one, it was reported in the YNW Melly trial, YNW Bortland had powder residue on his hands and a change of clothing for when he dropped off Sack Chaser and Juvie to the hospital. YNW Bortland and Melly were the only two men in the vehicle with them, including a video of YNW Melly's own lawyer revealing to the jury that Bortland lied to the feds.
Demon's lies, those were his lies. Cortland Henry shows up at Memorial Hospital, Miramar. You don't see him sitting there, but where you will see him sitting is in the driver's seat of a car with two bodies, car riddled with bullets. And when he shows up with a change of clothing, change of shirt, powder residue on his hands, evidencing that he had discharged a firearm. And he lies. He lies about where the incident occurred. He lies about how it occurred. And he lies about not having a phone. I think it was Miss Bradley herself who said, everybody has a phone in his pocket, not Cortland Henry. There were 3 phones.
As YNW Melly's own attorney is now revealing that YNW Bortland could have had a much bigger impact on the case than we all know, as even the rap lawyer would confirm that was YNW Melly's attorney.
And we have an absolute shell being dropped by the defense, a mic drop moment. The lead attorney on Melly's defense team telling the jury that Cortland Henry lied to police when he showed up at Memorial Hospital that morning. He lied about what happened. He lied about not having a phone on him. That Cortland Henry, this is according to Melly's attorney, that Cortland Henry showed up at that hospital with a change of clothes on, and that Cortland Henry showed up at that hospital with powder residue on his hands.
The interview of YNW Bortland lying to the feds was also then shared to the jury, further showing that Bortland did have a huge impact on the case. As YNW Melly's lawyer also revealed, Bortland brought a change of clothing to a recording studio at 4 in the morning, which is a pretty suspicious thing to do. However, here's the interview of Bortland lying to the feds.
And I'm driving, ducking for my life, trying to make sure I don't get hit. And you telling me you telling me about some shit. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to make sure I don't get hit. I'm driving. I'm trying to make sure I don't get hit. You know what I'm saying? What I'm gonna be worried about? You know what I'm saying?
I know it's not for you to worry about.
Shit crazy, bro.
But if you tell me it happened there's got to be some evidence there. There's going to be broken glass, just like there's broken glass over here from when you guys opened the doors and stuff like that. Okay, there's going to be broken glass over there when the windows got out. There's going to be casings from the people at your car. Okay, there's going to be evidence over there. Okay, right now there's nothing. I kind of think I know what happened because I got information.
This is all leaving many to believe YNW Melly is trying to put this onto Bortland, that way he can be released. As later on in the trial, we would then hear more evidence of Bortland having firearm residue on his hands. As the report would go on to state, forensic scientists that covered the passings in the YNW Melly trial says co-defendant YNW Bortland tested positive for firearm residue.
So the right hand of Cortland Henry contained 0 particles characteristic of shot residue and 2 component particles, and the left hand contained 1 particle characteristic of shot residue and 1 2-component particle.
Okay. And can you explain to us what that means?
Basically, overall, there was shot residue present on the hands.
making many realize this trial is starting to seem as if it's transitioning into more of a YNW Bortland trial. As with every prosecution witness that took the stand to try to make YNW Melly look guilty, practically all did the opposite, as we would see an FBI agent go on to take the stand. This agent specializes in cell phone data research. The report would go on to state, YNW Melly's lawyer questions FBI agent that did an analysis on Melly's phone at the time of the crime.
Based on the information, you can't really tell the court precisely which locations these phones are following in, can you?
No, one of the limitations of cellular analysis is that you can only say a general area where the device would be at a given time.
All right. So even with the general analysis, all of the steps that we've gone through for about 4 or 5 hours, at the end of the day, you can never give an exact location.
True.
And could you tell if somebody was walking around a car with the phone? Would you be able to tell that?
No.
So it'd be your testimony that this phone, 9807, could be from here to here, correct?
Yes.
And what was the distance?
While he did share important information, it wasn't until the next person on the stand where YNW Melly just looks even more innocent. A DNA specialist took the stand. His job was to go over DNA research on items that were found at the crime scene, including items that were found inside of the Jeep that they were all driving in. As the report goes on to state, DNA analyst confirms YNW Melly's DNA was not found on multiple items that were recovered at the crime scene.
We're going to item number 22. The swab from the Gucci sandals. We're able to compare the profile from Mr. Demons as opposed to the profile developed from those sandals.
I did, and he was excluded.
The stain on the front of the t-shirt, item number 23. We're able to compare Mr. Demons' profile to that.
I did a comparison, and he was again excluded.
What about item number 24, the cutting of the stain of the rear of the t-shirt?
After comparisons were done, he was excluded.
Okay, then on item number 25, the swab of stain from the Air Jordans.
Again, an exclusion.
Going on to item number 26, the swab from the yellow jacket.
An exclusion as well.
And in terms of the item number 27 and 28, the swabs at the Gatorade bottles. What were the results on that?
Those were both exclusions.
However, YNW Melly's DNA was found on the car door handle, which is very obvious as we all watched him get into the vehicle.
Excuse me, you're able to see?
And this then leads into why everyone believes the prosecution has zero idea of what they are doing. On day 1 of the YNW Melly trial, they revealed to the jury that Melly was picked up by Fredo Bang after the crime happened.
And Chris Thomas are. So what you're also going to find out is while Mr. Demons is out there on the side of the road, 4 in the morning, 4:42 specifically, he sends a drop pin, digital homing beacon, to his current location, to one of his friends, Frederick Givens. Frederick Givens is also involved in the music industry, and he asked to be picked up. Frederick Givens, then, about 11 minutes later, is sent another drop pin, where Mr. Demons has moved a couple of meters. What you're going to find out as well, though, is these digital leashes, they have more than just phone calls.
In doing so and revealing that he was picked up by Fredo Bang, and his DNA no longer showing up on any sort of item at the crime scene or even inside of the vehicle, all YNW Melly and his lawyers now have to do is just prove that he was picked up by Fredo Bang before the crime happened. YNW Melly and his lawyers know that this is an amazing thing going for them. This is how they reacted just moments after during the first recess of that day.
Thank you. We're request the jury step down. Counsel remain. Call with the defendant and witness. Yes, counsel, I'm sorry. I just figured it was easier if we just let the jury go.
Understood.
Makes sense.
Your Honor, may we have this discussion just in case there needs to be some supplementation testimony outside the presence of the
Sure.
However, seeing YNW Melly laughing and smiling with his lawyers all day during trial is not sitting well with Satchaser and Juvie's family. This would go on to make Juvie's father speak up, as the prosecution are not doing a good job whatsoever. I could only imagine how annoyed they are watching this go down. We would see a report of YNW Juvie's father explained why he believes YNW Melly is responsible for this crime.
From the day one, I believe that Melly was responsible for my son on October 26th when I first heard the story, because his explanation when I finally talked to him in Cortland on a FaceTime, their response and how they was reacting, they showed no remorse. They didn't act like they was grieving, like they lost a best friend or nothing. They was, in my opinion, they was in the best spirits. They wasn't reacting to, they act like they didn't have take a loss at all. That's how I took it. And then when I was talking to them, I still had in the back of my mind that something's not right.
However, just moments after we would see Juvie's father speaking out, we would probably see another major win for Melly in the end, as in the report of YNW Melly's reaction when a firearm expert tells the judge he didn't bring the item because he has no idea what item was used for this crime would be shared within the jury, alongside YNW Melly's reaction.
Why not?
So the first thing is I didn't have a firearm, so I can't know which firearm I'm going to use in order to replicate any of my tests. So I can't make tests for this determination because I don't know what firearm was used.
Okay. Do you have a...
For years onto years, we all believed that YNW Melly was gonna look so guilty once his trial started. 100K Track, known as Melly's music manager, did an interview with DJ Academics just around 2 years ago, where he explained Melly has great defenses on his side, and we all definitely should have listened to him.
He built a real great solid team away from just being innocent, because he wouldn't do such a crime. He prepared himself and got a proper, defense. Their job is to handle their stuff in trial, not on social media. You guys are taking it that way. If they say they got DNA in a car, I'm just gonna tell you, Melly DNA was found in the car. You're gonna think, yeah, his DNA was found in the car the day of the. Oh, he jumped in a car and his DNA was in the car. He did it, okay? But you're not gonna put the fact that this was his car for 6-7 months on those documents and dockets and just automatically be like, yo, he's fried. You don't even know what the defense is. You don't even know what the rebuttal is. You don't even know why that situation occurred. You hear ballistics flying, you don't know what the defense is. You hear this, you hear that. You get what I'm saying?
I'm gonna be honest.